Good morning and welcome to Retirement Tax Matters. I'm Adam Reed. This is Garrett Crawford, our resident CFP. How are we doing this morning, Garrett?
Doing pretty good. I was, kind of right out of the chute. I've been thinking a lot about state taxes this week.
Oh, that sounds exciting.
Not totally related to what we're talking about today, but it's just been interesting as I've connected with some of our listeners and people that are watching. They're from all over the, United States. And being from Tennessee, I think we're kind of immunized from this idea of state taxes, and we don't think about it as much. But I just notice, all around the country, how much state taxes influence where we live, how we spend our money, and for you all that are out there in those states with high state taxes, boy, it adds an extra level of planning, and it's just an interesting facet.
Well, and it's been funny being a Tennessean now my whole life. It's people are moving in here, and I lived in Cookeville a few years back, which is kind of like where Crossville's overflow goes now. Like a lot of retirement community there. We'd see people from California, New York, especially during the pandemic. And
Crossville is about the size of New York City, or a little bit smaller.
A little bit smaller.
Okay.
A lot of golf though, and that's all that really matters when you're headed for retirement. But a lot of people coming into Tennessee, and I see different numbers all the time. But I think a big part of that is state taxes. So it makes sense. Well, hey, we've. I feel like seeing a lot of comments these last few weeks and gotten a lot of really good ideas. You guys, honestly, in a lot of ways, maybe we hire some of you on as our chief executive content creator officers. But gotten some really good ideas for some different videos. And one that we saw the other day that I thought was maybe more prevalent than I thought was, hey, don't forget about us single people. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, that's really important. One, because there's a lot of single people to begin with, but also two, half of your couple, if you're married, is going to end up probably single at some point for a time being. And so
we have a lot of single clients.
Yeah, we have a lot of single clients. And then, when spouses pass away, more single clients. And so it definitely is an important demographic. And I think it is. And I think we're guilty of this, which is cool. I think we're coming back to this. But also I see it online. Oh, well, hey, just kind of chop everything in half and it's about right. And it's like, well, sometimes that's true, and sometimes that's very not true.
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
I thought it maybe be a good idea today, and I think you were thinking maybe play some Mythbusters of, is that actually true in certain areas, and come in here and help people kind of navigate, hey, I'm a single filer. I'm thinking about RMDs. I'm thinking about Roth conversions. What should I be aware of? What should be on my mind as I come into those things? But maybe to start, kind of set the table for us, what are we kind of diving into today? I think our last video on kind of tax brackets was the 22 versus 24%, but it was geared more towards the married filing jointly brackets.
Yeah, sure.
What are we kind of looking at today if we're talking more to the single filer, kind of what's on our mind as far as like tax pressure for them as they head into retirement or in retirement, or maybe even on the tail end of their retirement, thinking more about legacy?
Yeah. So as I was preparing to talk about this morning, I was just thinking about, one, we don't speak to every single person, out in the world. Mm-hmm. Like our niche that we're trying to communicate with here on our YouTube channel are people that are within that net worth of $2 million and $8 million. There's a lot of people that don't have that much money. There's quite a few people that have more than that. But we feel like this niche, it's like really hard to find information for people that are kind of we would call them high net worth retirees, but oftentimes I think we can be guilty of just thinking about married households. And I think today, like what I was struck with is that if we have a single person, maybe they've been married, maybe they've never been married. We'll talk about that, I think, later in the episode. But if you're a single person and you're looking, you log into Schwab or Fidelity or your bank account, your financial aggregator, and you're seeing $4 million, $5 million. You're not a prototypical person that the tax code was written for. Like when I think of single people, I think about just intuitively is like they should earn about half as much as a married couple because maybe they're dual income. And so the tax brackets are written in a way where you get taxed more at a lower rate because you're not making as much money as two people that are living in a house together. And I think for the high net worth single retiree that we talk to, I don't think they find themselves in that situation. And because, there probably is a small chance, we talk about this, that maybe you're single and between 2 and 8 million and you inherited that money. But I would take a guess, and based on lots of Zoom calls and phone calls and meetings here at the office, is that you've built that level of savings because you're a good saver, but also like you're smart, you're good at your job, you've been promoted, you're having high income during your working years, and you knew how to save. And so you're effectively like, I hate to use this, I don't hate to use it's a term, but like you're the primary breadwinner of a single household. And so for a married household, if they're going to have between $2 and $8 million, that usually one of those spouses is the one that's attributable to making a majority of that income. And so you're kind of off the bell curve of normal if you're a single person that has kind of worked and made an amazing income and saved $4, $5, $6 million, maybe in an IRA brokerage account. And so what you find yourself kind of positioned as you're being, the word that comes to my mind is punished for having a really high successful income, but you don't get the tax brackets of a married person. And so like that's how I would set up this episode today. It's not talking about every single filer in the country, but just this narrow niche of single filers that have been really successful and they've saved a lot of money in their retirement accounts. And so how do we think about Roth conversions and avoiding kind of the big part of this, whereas married filing jointly is like 24%. We don't want to go over 24%. If you're between 2 and 8 million, you're probably looking at 32%. 22, 24 is unrealistic, and 32. So maybe we'll get into the details here in a second.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, and I think it's interesting too because some of those marginal brackets can kind of be skewed as well. Where different IRMAA thresholds, I think we're calling it kind of like the tax web. It's not, and I'm sure there's math behind it. I'm sure there's reasons these different things land at different places. But to me, at face value, it seems like they just threw these things at a board and hoped that they stuck. You've got the net investment income tax level. We've got the place where some of your qualified dividends phase out. We've got different tax brackets that are jumping up. How are you helping somebody think through this in a precise way? Maybe what's the dangers of somebody that says, well, maybe I'll convert 20,000 to Roth this year, or maybe I'll take a little extra on my IRA. Those people that are just kind of, swinging for the fences and hoping they hit something. They're blindfolded. It's almost like a piñata. How do you help kind of educate them, warn them, but then also how do you help the people that are trying to plan for it, give them the information they need to make good decisions?
And so some people out there are do-it-yourselfers and want to be educated. There are other people out there, these are the people that usually work with us. They're smart, capable, but they don't want to spend their time navigating IRMAA, net investment income tax, and ordinary income rates. And so they'll hire us to do that. But let's, I've got some paper here. You can see it on my desk. Let's go through some numbers specifically for single filers. Forget all those married people today, right? Mm-hmm. This 200,000 number for a single person is a big number. And I say 200,000, I'm not talking about money in your bank account. I'm talking about like taxable income. In 2026, and then, these numbers go up each year, but in 2026 for a single filer, you hit, or let's say it differently, you jump up from a 24% marginal income tax bracket to 32% in 2026 at $201,776. So for every dollar on your tax return that is basically over $201,000, you're going to be taxed at 32%. Now, if we just back down one level, I think this is kind of the stark difference. The beginning of the 24% tax bracket is a taxable income of $105,701 and goes up to $201,775,000. And so just a little aside here, if you got between 2 and 8 million, a lot of that money's in pre-tax IRA funds, you have a brokerage account, and you've got Social Security that may trigger at some point. My guess is you're going to be in that 24 to 32% tax bracket. And my hunch is that a lot of you will find yourself with a taxable income over $201,000. And my disclaimer there is somebody may say, well, I don't live on $201,000. I need a lot less than that. I shouldn't have that issue. Well, the point here is that any additional income, which is like an IRA distribution, maybe you want to buy a new car and a lot of your money's in an IRA, you need to pull out $60,000 gross. You need to withhold 24 or 30% for taxes. All of that money that comes out of your 401k gets added to your taxable income. And so that $201,000 after a standard or itemized deduction is still that's not all spending money. That could be distributions for a lot of things. But $201,000 is when you hit that 32% marginal tax bracket, which is a big jump and arguably a big pain point.
Real quick, I think a fun game to play this week, if we can talk you guys into it, is go down in the comments your first car and how much you paid for it. And then your most recent car and how much you paid for it. And I'd be interested to see the discrepancy there. But
probably a big jump. So that's just federal income taxes. You may, like we kind of did an open, you may be in a state income tax where you have to pay additional taxes on that. So already we're getting to an uncomfortable tax level for a lot of people, maybe even higher than during your working years. The other one is net investment income tax. This one is like an odd threshold that was set many years ago and just hasn't been updated. But if you have a brokerage account or if you have investment income, you could be subject to the net investment income tax, where if your income is over your adjusted gross income is over $200,000, there's kind of a formula that gets applied here, but your qualified dividends, your ordinary dividends, your capital gains, short-term or long-term, can get hit with an additional 3.8% net investment income on top of whatever tax rate you're having to pay. And that one can creep in. For married filing jointly, it's $250. For a single, it's $200. But again, that $200,000 number, you're in the crosshairs of that. And then the third one, if you're getting close to Medicare age, which is 65 for a lot of people, it could be later if you're still working, but you're going to have to deal with what I'm quickly learning is the most hated feature of all retirement.
I hate it, and I'm not even there yet.
Yeah, do you know what it is, Adam?
Yeah, it's the IRMAA surcharges. Everybody walks around the office all angry all the time, and we've got a big punching bag in the back that has IRMAA printed on it, and clients get to come in and punch it a couple times before they leave.
We could just put the comment IRMAA down at the bottom, and everybody would dislike rise to the top. But boy, I get it. It's like you've paid a lot into Medicare your whole life. You don't want to pay more, but Medicare is a means-adjusted program. It means if your income is higher, you're going to pay more into Medicare. And if you're a single person, these thresholds are lower than, maybe people that that are married. And so I'm going to skip a lot of the bottom ones, because if you're between 2 and 8 million, I think you're going to be in IRMAA land regardless if you want to or not. But I'm going to call this the third level of Medicare IRMAA. If your income, and this includes Roth conversions, IRA distributions, pension income, Social Security, if that goes above $171,000, you're going to pay an extra $3,895 for your Medicare Part B premium, which you're already paying $202.90 a month, but an extra $3,895 a year. You're going to pay a little bit more for your Part D plan 2. If your income goes over $205,000, you're going to pay $5,355 extra per year. And then if you go over $500,000 as a single, you're going to pay $5,844. So actually not a huge jump on that last one, but still noteworthy. So a lot of numbers. You could probably Google search a lot of that. But the point is, I'm trying to emphasize, if you're a single filer, high net worth retiree, when you hit that $200,000 taxable income number, you start seeing 32% plus 3.8% plus an additional Medicare IRMAA charge. And on top of that, the fourth one is you may end up in an area where your capital gain income gets taxed at a higher rate. And so for a lot of people, long-term capital gains get taxed at 15%. If your income goes over $545,000, you end up at 20% for long-term capital gains and qualified dividend income. So I'm out of breath, Adam, but
put me in, coach. Put me in.
You talk about this like compression of taxes.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm a single high net worth retiree and I hear that, I'm like, oh boy, I wish somebody would have mentioned that 5 or 10 years ago. Hey, that's me. What can we do?
Mm-hmm.
Or what should we be thinking about?
Well, and I think an important thing too that I know you'd like to touch on is somebody that's in the 24% bracket right now, and you even kind of alluded to earlier of, I'm in the 20, that'll never happen to me. I'd never spend that much money. Who could spend that much money? Because like we've talked about over and over and over again, a lot of the people listening to these podcasts, great savers, probably need a little encouragement to spend more, but RMDs are coming. And so I think that's something to keep in the forefront of people's mind as they're thinking about this is maybe you are in the 24% bracket right now. You got Social Security, you're taking out a little bit to live on. You're enjoying life, not doing anything too lavish, too crazy. But as you creep closer to that 73 or for 75, depending on your year of birth, you get closer to that big old IRA that you've been saving for and has built some kind of security and peace of mind for you. The government's going to start saying you got to take that out. And even if you don't spend it, even if you reinvest it, the tax bracket is going to compound quickly. And so for that person in the 24% bracket, with RMDs coming that could put you into the 37% bracket, does it make sense to look at Roth conversion to the 32% bracket or even maybe a little bit through the 24% bracket? How are you helping people think through that? And maybe as another little curveball to throw in there for you, how are people thinking through legacy there and then state taxes and things as well?
Yeah. Okay. So put me on the 30-minute timer. I think
actually,
you know what? I'm going to reduce it a whole bunch. Today is April 29th. We're always 1 week ahead. Even if you're single, go back and listen to the episode, I think it's 33, that's releasing on April 29th, which is today, talking about reverse engineering your RMD. It's not made specifically for single people, but the concepts and the same ideas apply. Like, let's start at the end of our life, and that's hard to predict, but let's start 20, 30 years from now. Let's try to get an idea of how big a spender you are. If you're thrifty and you don't spend a lot, that IRA that's $3 million is probably going to grow through retirement, even through RMDs. But let's try to get a picture of what your tax rate might be at the end of your retirement. And we've got to figure out, is the game we're playing, is it stay in the 32%, or is the game that you're playing, unfortunately, like, I'm going to hit 37%. There's no way around that. And so it's not as fun of a conversation to like play the 35 versus 37% game, but that might be your game that you have to play in retirement. And so I would really encourage anybody that's thinking about this RMD topic to listen to that episode, because it definitely applies. Now, one caveat to this subject, we're talking about single people. Not all single people are created equal. There's different profiles of what it means to be single. You could be a single person that has never been married and you don't have children. That's a very different single person than option 2, which would be a single person that has never been married but has children. And then option 3 would be a single person who was married for a really long time, and maybe a spouse got diagnosed with an unexpected illness and life did not turn out the way that you expected it. And so you were married for a long time, but now you come to the table realizing we have a lot of money, but now I'm going to get taxed. And so those are three different profiles. And so I'm going to start with kind of generically the first and the second profile. You're a single person. Maybe you don't expect to get remarried in retirement, but you have people in your life that you care a lot about. Or you may be really charitably inclined and you want to leave a gift to some charitable cause that you really believe in. I think when we come back to this RMD question, and maybe you've already watched that reversed engineering your RMD or your 6-figure RMD, which was last week's, you're gonna have to make that discernment of like, where is my life going if it's predictable 20, 30 years from now? How much money could I have at the end of my life? And what is the purpose of this money? Is it you just want to spend it all? That's a different game than you may end up having extra money and you have maybe a charitable cause. I would say if you have a charitable cause and you want a lot of money to go in there, Roth conversions may not actually be the best idea because you're paying tax now and you're doing that on tax deferred money. And I would really encourage that person to think if a lot of money is going to go to charity, the IRA money, 401k money is really the best money to go to charity. Don't pay tax on it and then have a Roth go to charity. That doesn't make a lot of sense. But let's say probably like a lot of people, you may have a small piece that goes to charity, but that's really not your angle. It's going to go to people or loved ones. The number of beneficiaries that you have play a big role in how you structure and think about Roth conversions at a 32% level. Because let's say you have one child that would inherit whatever is left over. If you live an average life expectancy, maybe you lived to 90, 93, and that money is inherited by one child, that's a lot of money that could be left inherited by one beneficiary, at which if it's in a pre-tax IRA, all of that money has to be distributed as the law stands now within 10 years. And so we'd want to take a look at that beneficiary, their occupation. What tax rate do you think that they would be in their retirement? If you're really successful, you're a doctor, and sometimes family lineages, doctors beget more doctors, and they're also in a high tax bracket, leaving them a pre-tax amount that they have to distribute within 10 years might end up pushing them to the highest tax bracket. We don't even know if 30 years from now, will the high tax bracket, will it be lower or will it be higher? My bet would be the same or higher, but my guess is as good as any. But now let's say you have maybe no children and you have like 20 nieces and nephews that you just want to like be the best, aunt or uncle that they've ever seen and leave them a lot of money. That IRA money is going to get split among, a lot of different beneficiaries. And so that's a different equation. And so my point here is both of those are extreme. One beneficiary or 20. In reality, you're probably going to be somewhere in between. But I think thinking through, am I going to spend all this money? Is there going to be money left over? And how much of that would be split if it was pre-tax? Would those kids be in a lower tax bracket than me or a higher tax bracket? That needs to be considered. And then I think finally on this episode or this portion of the question, I let off this topic about state taxes and that I'm learning a lot about it. If a child, let's say they're also in a 37% tax bracket, and they are in a state that is different than yours. Maybe they live right here in Tennessee, and there's no state taxes on an inherited IRA. That would be a different story than if you inherited the IRA money in a state with a high state tax that you would have to add on top of the federal income tax. And so maybe a small slice, but I do think state taxes and a beneficiary and what they might inherit and the ultimate tax rate plays into this idea of how much to convert. And then my last point is maybe you're at 32, 35, or 37. You're not really sure where you're going to land. I think there's a lot of peace of mind that comes from Roth conversions. And once you pay the taxes and move it to a Roth and you don't have to think about, the government's policy on future tax increases, I wouldn't overstate, even as a single person, the peace of mind that could come from a Roth conversion. And so as much as it is mathematical, and I love math, it's also psychological too, and I think that should be weighed in.
Yeah, it's so individualistic. I think if you're working with an advisor, make sure they know your goals and kind of what the money's earmarked for, where you're hoping it ends up, how you hope to spend it, because most people worth their weight, especially with AI and stuff nowadays, can do the math. The math's not maybe the hard part, but it's connecting with you and making sure your goals, your ideas, your values align with how your money's being spent, how it's being converted, how it's being taxed, to maximize the things you want your money to do. I think maybe the last thing we'll touch on is, somebody loses a spouse, something happens where you're unexpectedly in the single filing tax bracket, or you're filing taxes as a single filer. How do you help somebody navigate that? How do you kind of remove the emotion from that and help somebody just walk through like, hey, here's some good financial decisions to make. What can they do to do those things well? Because there's, you've talked about it in one of our earlier episodes, but there's some people that are kind of made for that. Like, hey, I've lost a spouse. Let's optimize things. Let's get in place. That's what they'd want. And there's some people that just need time. And so I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. But if somebody's wired that way of, hey, maybe I just lost a spouse here at the beginning of this year and I'm listening to this and I want to make sure things are in order so that I don't have to be stressed about these things while I'm grieving. What can you tell somebody like that that's trying to kind of optimize things, get things squared away? What opportunities should they be looking for?
Yeah, and so you said I said something like that a long time ago. I also think there's an element here of just wealth psychology and reminding people that you might already have enough. And so my main response to your question would be, sometimes it's hard to wrap our head around how much money we have. And so, like, if you're going from married filing jointly to single, like that's an incredibly difficult time to process. Like, hey, I was married and now I'm not. I don't have my spouse anymore. They were the financial kind of quarterback of our household. I'm having to step up and I'm having to do this. And, I read an article, I watched a YouTube video, and they said my taxes are going to be really high. And, you just kind of start to spiral because you've never done this before. Again, there are a lot of situations where this, losing a spouse financially could be catastrophic and have a standard of living change. I would, for this specific niche of people between 2 and 8 million, my hunch is you've got enough. Mm-hmm. And so I think I would start this conversation about, I'm a single filer. I got a lot I would want to pause, back up. We would talk about the expenses that they need, more than likely between Social Security, the money that they've had left. There are many things to grieve through the passing of a spouse, but maybe taxes and 32% and 35% might not be the highest priority. Mm. So I would start with more of a counseling session, which I know you've mentioned before. We're just as much counselors as anything else. But once we get through that, you can't change your hand. Your life deals you cards, and it'd be one temptation to just kind of bemoan and say, man, look at these taxes and how much I have to pay, and this isn't fair. That's not going to get you anywhere. You're not going to complain to the IRS and they're going to change the rules for you. Instead, I think this is where this tax return driven financial planning process that we walk clients through is the best way to solve this for a single filer, which is, what opportunities do we have today that we can take the most advantage of, knowing what your 2026 or 2036 might look like, and let's do the best that we can. Let's get you the income that you need to live the life that you want to live, and then let's have taxes be not the priority. Let's move it back to second or third place. And how much, if you've got a huge amount and you're now going single and income's going to push you over the 35% level at some point, let's go ahead and get some money out at 32%. Maybe let's talk about charitable giving. QCDs, you can do, it's a little over $100,000 now, but you can start giving money away out of your IRA to charitable causes. We can start gifting money to kids. But the tax return driven process, I think, is the way to do it. Annual decisions. And if you do small adjustments each year and you make the use of your tax brackets while being aware of net investment income tax and IRMAA charges, I think you're going to end up okay.
Mm-hmm. It just kind of dawned on me that all of our single listeners have to deal with all of the married content and listen all the way through and try to get nuggets. I wonder how many married people shut it down. It's, it's for single people. I don't need it. It's like, no. Hey, listen, they listen to all your content. Make sure you lock it in here. And like we said, at some point, most of us are probably going to be facing some of these decisions. Maybe it's not a long term, maybe it's not a full lifetime of it, but at some point there's probably some of this coming their way. So I think I'll just echo what Garrett said is tax return driven financial planning is so important. Getting your tax returns, sitting down with either a trusted professional or on your own, or kind of pulling up our YouTube videos or going to our website and getting the year-end tax planning checklist and just walking through that with your tax return. maybe making some projections. I know in our office we normally make some like summer projections, and then we kind of fine tune them there in the fall to land on some decisions that need to be made. And I think it's really, really served our clients. And as we kind of get deeper into it and the software gets better and clients start to get used to it, they start helping us refine those projections even more, and we're getting more precise and more precise. So absolutely, tax return driven financial planning, I think, is a huge key for anyone that wants to optimize and make the most of what they have to steward. But I think specifically for this case, for single filers, whether that's a new thing that's on your plate, or whether you've been single for years and loving it, doing Viking cruises and traveling the world, tax return driven financial planning is a great place to optimize and make the most of what you've been given.
And then I will say, just add two more things. I do a weekly newsletter. You can go to our website, you can sign up for that. And then 3 key tax planning questions related to every episode that we do. So single filers, I hear you. Not every piece of content is written for you. And so what I would encourage you to do is probably sign up for the newsletter, where I send out those 3 key tax planning questions every week. I will have examples in there for single people in the future. And whether you subscribe to YouTube, we're going to address that. But I just want to let you know that we're thinking about that as we create content.
Sounds good. Well, I don't want to be too long-winded today, so let's shut it down here. I'm Adam Reed. This is Garrett Crawford. We're Retirement Tax Matters.
Thanks so much for listening to Retirement Tax Matters. As always, the ideas we share here are for educational purposes, and we do our best to get it right, but this isn't a substitute for specific tax or financial advice, because a truly effective strategy is always built around your personal situation. For more resources and to see our full disclosure, visit us at retirementtaxmatters.com.